Um, it was something that I was hoping would not happen this year. We've gone through this before, dirty politics, and it's something that I think needs to be addressed. There was a good article on our SuperTalk website from J.T. Mitchell. This tends to happen in most of the election years. Some races seem to have more mudslinging than others, and it's quickly becoming the case in the upcoming Lieutenant Governor's Republican primary headlined by incumbent Delbert Hosemann and Senator Chris McDaniel. We've gone through this. You and I have been long members of this family, understand the caustic, unbelievable election for the U.S. Senate Thad Cochran. It's still there on YouTube. You can Google Gallo show and McDaniel, and you'll see it. I mean, it's just part of the history of the state. It was a volatile campaign, and everybody was hoping that we wouldn't have the same thing. McDaniel, a Republican firebrand who has revolved most of his campaign around Delbert the Democrat, the article continues, has used stop after stop to try to convince the voters of Hosemann, a lifelong Republican, is actually a RINO, or Republican in name only. Sidebar here. It's understandable that an outside PAC would consider that a good campaign tactic. I guess if I was on there, it would be a tactic that I think you could use. And using Delbert's appointments of some of the Democrat senators to the committee chairmanship, that's the entire attack strategy of painting Delbert as a closet Democrat, and it's completely void of reality. And I say that because I've been here on the air. I mentioned to Delbert when he was on here that I wasn't pleased with that. I thought he could have put some Republicans in there. But then again, I also mentioned to him, as I think I mentioned to Chris when he was on with me, show me where that influence has hurt putting those Democrats on there. I want to know. Show me where the Democrats have killed legislation. Some of the legislation went through some changes, maybe for the better. In particular, to pass a complete tax bill to completely do away with the income tax speedily. I mean, in the past year. May not have been a good idea, especially with the economic situation as it is. It was a more prudent idea. I'm not sure if that was part of it or not. But through every session of the legislature, through all the years as Secretary of State, I've been here on the air, interviewing, talking, giving you stories. So I have to be open and honest about this. Character assassinations, dirty political action campaign, backdoor politics. It stinks. And by the time you ship it from Virginia and a dark money pack into Mississippi, by the time it gets here, it's rancid. No Democrat would have ever attempted to do voter ID against the opposition all the way up to the Barack Obama administration if you were a RINO or a Democrat. It is completely void of any reality whatsoever. But if that's what you're hanging your hat on, maybe the polls tell you you got to do something. I don't know. But I care about the state. No matter how much I disagree on several of the committee assignments, those facts are what Delbert Hosemann has done for the Republican Party and what Tate Reeves has done for the Republican Party, the advancements that we have made, even though I hate to keep mentioning this, we've dug a big hole in our state. 140 years, Democrats control the shovel. So any small advancement, at least we're advancing. You look at some of the media, well, we're not advancing enough, or we're still on the last place. Yes. And you got to wonder if Democrats were still in control, like the city of Jackson or any other place, how much deeper that hole would be. Latest advertisements paid for by Invest in Mississippi PAC. McDaniel supporters continue to preach what many voters along the campaign trail have already heard over and over again. McDaniel's belief that Hosemann is pro-abortion due to Hosemann's history of working at a women's clinic in South Jackson. If you take that little bit of information, then that's how you're basing the clarity on this one? And somebody challenges you on that, you have the oratory talent to set them down, but you don't have the facts. Political spot continues. Hosemann proudly declares himself as pro-life. But guess where he served as vice president? None other than the South Jackson Women's Clinic, an abortion clinic that has since been shuttered. And then he asked the question on the commercial, what kind of leader serves as vice president of an abortion clinic? So you're telling me through all these years, Secretary of State, the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Mississippi, is actually served as vice president of an abortion clinic? If that doesn't catch your attention, nothing will. And man, when you hear it every 15 minutes at a campaign stop or somewhere else, Hosemann, who has stayed, back to the article, Hosemann, who has stayed mostly quiet and let McDaniel sling all the mud up to this point, broke his silence on the matter Wednesday afternoon, calling McDaniel a pathological liar and a coward. Sidebar here. If you were running against somebody whom you knew was as pro-life as you are, and you heard the newest attack, and that attack infers that he actually is someone who served as vice president of an abortion clinic where babies are slaughtered weekly, I'm going to tell you what I think 99.9% of you would do in this audience. I really believe this. You'd pick up the phone, and you'd demand they cancel the damn ad immediately. And you'd let them know that this is not the way you want to win this election. Not here. Not this time. It's a whole new different ballgame. But is it really new? We've been through this before. Back to the article, Hosemann said, Chris McDaniel's a pathological liar and a coward. His latest stunt involves totally false accusations using a newly organized dark money PAC, illegally run by his own campaign staffers to defame me and my faith. A portion of the tweet from Hosemann read, I've always fought to protect the sanctity of life. This is why I'm the only candidate in the U.S. governor's race endorsed by the National Right to Life and the Mississippi Right to Life. So I have to ask, as just a voter, would a respected political group, very credible, the pro-life group, would they endorse a man who represented an abortion clinic? And what's the true story behind that? How is there a scintilla of truth in here that you can use this on an ad? Well, business records maintained by the Secretary of State's office show Hosemann listed as the vice president of the clinic. He was. From 1976 as a young lawyer to 1991. But that's where it ends. That's all the truism to this. The clinic's president, Dr. Larry Lipscomb, if anybody knows the truth, it's him, wrote in a memo dated June 4th, 1998, when this came up the first time in a political campaign. And when it did come up, it was ballyhooed down to even, back in those days, apparently even the Democrats were a little embarrassed that they brought this up. Not any longer. There's no such thing as embarrassment. At the time, the clinic provided obstetrician and gynecological services. These services did not include pregnancy termination, as the clinic did not offer that procedure. That happened several years later after Delbert Hosemann had left. So wait a minute. And by the way, the doctor also said, I am saddened that his name was mistakenly listed on documents filed by the Secretary of State. So the truth is, a young lawyer signed on to lend legal expertise. And by the way, if you're any kind of clinic, you better have legal counsel. As a young lawyer in 1979 or 1977, because there was a health clinic that served women, underprivileged women in a community that need that legal assistance in both their gynecological and for the most part, pregnant women. We'll continue with more. If you hear the explanation of this, and again, it came up once before, and it was poo-pooed down, and and nobody brought it up again. And you got to ask yourself, why in the world would you bring this up at this particular time again from the PAC, and what directives does the candidate have in this particular case? Because he's certainly mentioning this on the campaign trail. So I looked at the track record. If you look at this, by the way, there's a bit more to this news story if you want to read it, both the governor's race in general and also the lieutenant governor's race in the primary. I think choosing the wrong people could have devastating consequences for the future of the state. And if you make that choice based on good information, fine. But when you look at the record of Chris McDaniel, simply as a voter, you see, it's not conducive to putting together a winning strategy. I see somebody who cannot bring a coalition together anyway, and nowhere through the entire political career of this guy. When you nuke to conquer, it's not a good strategy. I mean, the collateral damage is horrific. And this opening salvo of mudslinging on Election Day is just a bad omen. Nobody in the state wanted to see this happen again. And if you're going to continue digging out of the hole, as I said, that the Democrats have used and controlled the shovels for 140 years, alienating a whole group of people, regardless of who they are, is not a good strategy in itself. So you have a young lawyer who uses his expertise to serve a women's neighborhood health clinic. Years after he leaves, the clinic evolves into more of an abortion clinic or an abortion mill than a health clinic, and he's not a part of that. But that's not the message the PAC is putting in the minds of Mississippi voters, and that's wrong. And if it's considered political normal, I will tell you, and I believe it sincerely, that's exactly why we have a large portion of people in this audience who would be absolutely perfect public servants to serve the people in any capacity in a political office, but they will not touch it because of stuff like this. But again, the message is that he worked at the clinic, and that's what's being spread. But I think a lot of people, they get sick of this in 4 months. And the wisdom here is, do I want this for 4 years? And I thought maybe I shouldn't even mention this and let it ride. But then again, Clarence Thomas' words from yesterday or day before were just kind of resonating in my brain, and it was eating away at it. And I just thought, it's my responsibility just to bring it forth to you for at least consideration. What did Clarence Thomas say?
Understand that it's not about you. It's about things that are far more important than you, and whether people are mad at you has nothing to do with whether you're right. You know, you can be in the middle of a hurricane, or you can be on a calm day. North is still north. You could be in a thunderstorm. North is still north. People can yell at you. North is still north. It doesn't change fundamental things. And in this business, right is still right, even if you stand by yourself.
There you go. And there are some people in the legislature who, fellow members, who are outraged by this. And some of them have already suffered some retribution, which, again, reminds me of the last campaign. So that's that on.